best place for below average Star Wars.
Hello there, and welcome to the Star Wars Show, the best place for below average Star Wars. I am the Dorky Jedi Pete, and we are back with another episode of our Purely BELTA series. What is Purely BELTA, you ask? Well, up in the northeast of England, Newcastle, where I'm from and where I'm recording this podcast today, Purely BELTA is a slang term. It means something that you find excellent or brilliant or really, really good. For example, my favourite bagel place in Newcastle is Dot Bagels. They do a fantastic bagel. My favourite bagel at Dot Bagels is their all-day breakfast bagel. So, in the terms of Purely BELTA, their all-day breakfast bagel is Purely BELTA. It's my favourite thing on their menu, and I love it. How does that tie into Star Wars? Well, we all know Star Wars is absolutely fantastic. We all love it. It's sort of the one thing that brings sort of all the Star Wars fans together across the world. But within Star Wars, there's so many different things that different people identify with, tie themselves to, really love. For example, in episode 1 of Purely BELTA, Brian Balance, he absolutely loves Qui-Gon Jinn. He thinks Qui-Gon Jinn is Purely BELTA. So we talked about that. Episode 2 of our Purely BELTA series, we spoke to Brandon from the Talking Bay 94 podcast. His favourite thing about Star Wars is the making of Star Wars, the behind-the-scenes features, all of that juicy content that we get on how things are made and done and how we get the products we love in the Star Wars universe. And today's episode is a very, very special one. We are joined by Savanna from the Dorky Diva Show. Savanna, how are you doing?
Hi, Peter. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
So as soon as I came up with the idea of the Purely BELTA series for the Star Wars podcast, I just knew I wanted to speak to as many people as I could who are passionate about Star Wars. So obviously, you know, yourself and Brian over there at the Dorky Diva Show are probably two of the most passionate people I know who talk about Star Wars. So obviously we managed to get Brian for episode 1, and I'm really pleased I managed to get yourself for episode 3.
I'm so happy to be here, and I'm just gonna forewarn you that I cannot say that phrase without doing it in an accent because it sounds really bad in my accent. So I'm gonna say Purely BELTA. Is that okay? Is that right? Purely BELTA? It just sounds so much
I don't know.
cooler when you say it, Peter. I can't do it.
The problem is when I say it, I just say it. I don't really think about it. So, but I think any way you want to say it is absolutely fine. We don't judge people here for how they pronounce Purely BELTA.
I think a lot of things in Star Wars are I can't even say it. Purely BELTA. So it was difficult to pick what I wanted to talk about today because there are a lot of things that I love. But can I announce what I chose?
You can indeed go for it.
So I decided that I wanted to talk about Kathleen Kennedy today because I think she is purely BELTA.
Indeed. It's one of the things Purely BELTA is where, because Star Wars is so huge and has so many different things about it that people love. Obviously, today we're going to talk about Kathleen Kennedy and find out why you think Kathleen Kennedy is Purely BELTA. But there's no reason why down the line we can have reoccurring guests. So you can come back on, Savanna, and talk about, you know, clones, the Clone Wars, those things that you love.
Cad Bane.
There's
There's just so much.
Definitely, you can even come on and talk about like Star Wars fashion if you wanted to, like absolutely anything. Anything that anyone's passionate about, they can come on and talk about on this show is the whole idea of this series. But for this episode, Savanna, you have decided to tell us why Kathleen Kennedy is Purely BELTA. Just to fill the listeners in and maybe aren't aware of sort of who Kathleen Kennedy is. You know, if you just sit and enjoy Star Wars, you might not know sort of the mechanics behind the scenes and how the studio works and operates. So Kathleen Kennedy is obviously the current president of Lucasfilm Limited. She was handpicked by George Lucas to be his successor when he decided to retire and sell the company to the Walt Disney Company. But before that, Kathy's had sort of, to be fair, as a producer, she's probably one of the biggest careers in Hollywood history. Would you agree, Savanna?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, her list of credits is extensive, and she's worked in the film industry since she finished her college degree. So she's been around for a while. And yeah, she's worked on dozens and dozens and maybe even hundreds of projects at this point. So I do think she is probably one of the most successful and, long working producers out there.
Definitely. So just to run through a few of Kathleen Kennedy's credits. So when she first got into the business, she worked as an associate producer, working alongside likes of Steven Spielberg. She worked as an associate producer on Raiders of the Lost Ark, on Poltergeist, on Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom, on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade as well. She also associate produced a segment in the Twilight Zone movie. That was the segment called Time Out. She then sort of moved on to become sort of a full-blown producer. And then this is where it gets sort of crazy listing the things that Kathleen Kennedy has produced. But she has produced E.T., The Extraterrestrial, Arachnophobia, Hook, Jurassic Park, The Indian in the Cupboard, Twister, The Sixth Sense, Jurassic Park 3, AI, Artificial Intelligence, Seabiscuit, Munich, War of the Worlds, 2005 version, The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, The Adventures of Tintin, Warhorse, Lincoln, Star Wars The Force Awakens, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, Star Wars The Last Jedi, Solo, A Star Wars Story, The Mandalorian TV series, Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, and obviously she is currently producing an untitled 5th Indiana Jones movie. And she also co-produced Studio Ghibli movie Ponyo, the US version of that. So again, like sort of dipping hands into animation there, similar to when she did with Tintin. And then also, as an executive producer, Kathleen worked on Gremlins, Back to the Future, The Goonies, An American Tail, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Back to the Future 2, Gremlins 2, The New Batch, Back to the Future Part 3, Cape Fear, Schindler's List, The Flintstones, The Lost World, Jurassic Park, Signs, Persepolis, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, The Last Airbender, The BFG, The Girl on the Train. And I think I'll end it there. But
you could go on all day.
Yeah, 100%. So I think like that's all the main ones for like that. Like when I've done some research on it, like those are all the ones that sort of jump out to me, and it's sort of like, working in Hollywood, you might be looking to work on one of those projects, but to be an integral part of all of them just goes to show, just how much of a legendary career Kathleen Kennedy has had and is still having.
Mm-hmm.
My first question for you, Savanna, is how did you feel sort of when the Walt Disney Company purchased Lucasfilm and when it was announced that sort of George had sort of handpicked Kathleen to be his successor and that Kathleen was going to be the president of the company in this new era?
I originally had very mixed feelings about all of that, and I'll preface it by saying I have known who Kathleen Kennedy is for probably like since I was a child because I grew up watching the Indiana Jones trilogy, the original 3 movies, and she worked on all of them. And she is in the behind the scenes featurettes for Temple of Doom and, the other 2 as well. But I remember her specifically in the one for Temple of Doom. So I knew who she was, and I knew that she had worked on a lot of the movies that I grew up on, like Back to the Future, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Like those are all movies that I watched growing up. So when George picked her to take over the company once it was purchased by Disney, I was very excited that she was a part of that. But I wasn't entirely on board with Disney purchasing the rights to Star Wars because I didn't really know what that meant. I knew that meant we would get new movies and stuff, but I didn't know exactly how much the company would be changing and how much the content would be changing. And at the time, I was just so heavily invested in the Clone Wars. And when Disney purchased Lucasfilm, the Clone Wars was canceled. So I had a little bit of a bitter taste in my mouth when that happened. But obviously, over the years, I've realized that she was absolutely the best person for the job. And I believed that from day one. And I think that she has really like steered the ship in the right direction. And I'm happy with how things have gone. But yeah, initially I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure how I feel about this. And I was really sad that the Clone Wars was canceled. But obviously now, so many years later, it came back and it got to be finished the way it was meant to be. So I'm thrilled about all of that. And I think that Kathy has done a phenomenal job leading this franchise. And I think that one of her best qualities is that she allows the creatives to do their job. And, we've read a lot of reports and rumors about, quote, creative differences between Kathy and different directors and such. But I do really think that with, the sequel trilogy and the standalone films, like they work very well together, but they're also very separate. And I think she allows the directors and the creative team working on those movies to put their best effort into it. And I don't really picture her as someone that like lords over the creative process. And I think that's a really good quality to have when you are leading a franchise as big as Disney or, Lucasfilm from the helm of Disney. But yeah, at the get go, I was not entirely sure what to think. But today, it's nice to look back and be like, all right, this went pretty well. She knows what she's doing.
Definitely, I think when you look at like what has happened in this era under Kathleen Kennedy's leadership, we've obviously had a new Star Wars trilogy, the sequel trilogy. We've had
Mhm.
these Star Wars standalone movies that we probably never thought would ever happen, like standalone movies. If you'd asked me that 10 years ago about standalone movies, I probably would have went, no, there's no chance of that happening.
Yeah.
But we've had two. We've had, the live action television arm of the company sort of
hmm
be created and sprung into action with The Mandalorian, um, being as fantastic as it is, but also as revolutionary as it is, with the volume and how ILM's developed that and how they can shoot
hmm
high quality high quality productions on a sort of high TV budget now, with that. Um, and then you look at the amount of shows that come in live action. We've got Book of Boba Fett, we've got more Mandalorian, we've got an Ahsoka series coming, we've got a Cassian Andor series, we've got a Kenobi series. All of these things are sort of in pre-production or production right now. And then that's before you look at what other movies could be coming down the line. Obviously,
hmm
we know Patty Jenkins is working on Rogue Squadron film. We know that Taika Waititi's working on his movie. We've had, you know, a Star Wars theme park now exists,
hmm
which again has sort of come all under the leadership of Kathleen Kennedy. Um, so I think it's easy to get, and I can see people online, they're like, oh, yeah, like she didn't agree with a couple of directors, but it's like, well, it's not a case of she didn't agree. It's a case like the whole creative process was obviously was
hmm
something not right. They've looked at it as a company, and there will be other
hmm
executives in there as well as probably executives from Disney. I don't think Bob Iger is going to sit there and let a $200 million Star Wars movie just happen without him keeping an eye on it. Um,
Yeah.
and if people aren't sticking to the scripts, often dailies are coming back from movies, and it's not looking right. There's a lot of money invested in these things. You've only got so many days to get so many setup shot, um, and you have to take action sooner or later, or you risk sort of having a movie that you can't release. Um,
hmm
but I think it's not just about that; it's about like all this other stuff that's going on. Um,
hmm
like running a company that's essentially, I would love to see what the percentage is of like obviously what the company was producing product wise before the Disney merger, and
hmm
then look at what it's producing now. And obviously, she's the head of all of that. So
It's a
it's a
lot.
huge undertaking. Yeah, and obviously, I've not been to Galaxy's Edge, but like from what I've heard, it's a fantastic theme park. yes, does have some of its issues, but like the fact that we have a Star Wars theme park and like that is up and running now and can only get better from where it is now,
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of a dream come true. And it's sort of things that George started. If you look at like,
Yeah.
George, he worked a lot with Disney with the Captain, is it the Captain EO ride he helped
Yes.
produce,
Yes.
Michael Jackson
Mm-hmm.
ride.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously also, Star Tours going in there very early.
Mm-hmm.
And I think George has spoken before as a child. He would go to Disneyland as a child,
Mm-hmm.
and spend these weekends there type of thing and be in awe of everything that was sort of going on. And now George's creation has its own theme park within the Disney theme parks, which
It's
I
amazing.
think it's just a magical thing. And it's one of those things where I think Kathy's very much kept sort of George's legacy alive as well as cementing her own legacy.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the biggest takeaway that I have for Kathy is that I think she 100% understands George's vision and what he did for the film industry as a whole. Like, George's legacy is obviously tied to Star Wars, but he did so much for the film industry as far as the advancement of CGI, computer generated graphics, amazing sound quality. Like, all of those things came from George. And now those types of innovations are continuing and advancing through Kathy's leadership because The Mandalorian and what they're doing in the volume is completely new and groundbreaking. And that's going to change filmmaking forever. Like, that one piece of technology is going to impact the way movies are made for the rest of our lives. And that happened under the leadership of Kathy. And obviously, she didn't sit down and create the volume, but, she is responsible for leading the company and the people that come up with these things and are motivated to make those changes happen, not only for Star Wars, but for filmmaking in general. And I think a lot of people like to focus on her flaws or when projects don't make as much money as they are expected to, but she has made Disney a lot of money through what she has done so far. I mean, The Force Awakens had a budget of $306 million, and that movie made $2 billion. And like Rogue One, the first standalone movie, had a budget of 200 million and it made $1 billion. So it's like clearly things are going well. And those first two movies right out of the gate were very successful. And I think overall, like, her legacy should really be tied to the advancements that she has encouraged in the company, like the volume and things like that.
Definitely. I mean, speaking of, talking about box office money, you know, Kathleen's been involved. I think all of the movies she's participated in making over the years have earned over $11 billion worldwide.
It's insane. It's so insane.
And I think as a producer, she's third behind only Steven Spielberg and Kevin Feige in domestic box office receipts.
That's
That was as of
amazing.
2020. Yep.
And I would
Um,
love to know too, like, I don't know if we'll ever have these numbers at hand, but I think The Mandalorian was a project that encouraged a lot of people to subscribe to Disney Plus. And so I'd be interested to know sort of what the um, profit was off of that as well, because I think that should be included, even though it's a series and it's on a subscription platform. You don't have ticket sales, but I think that show did generate a ton of money for Lucasfilm with the show itself and the subscriptions, but also the merchandising. I mean, everybody wants to buy something of Baby Yoda. So I think all of that is credited to her as well, or it should be at least.
yeah, I think definitely. I mean, you have, I think Bob Iger said, Disney Plus was meant to be his sort of leaving present to the Walt Disney Company as a stepping down as
Hmm.
CEO and launching Disney Plus, their new sort of subscribe based content. And we haven't seen the exact figures, but I guarantee probably two of the most streamed things on the first year Disney Plus would be The Mandalorian and The Clone Wars.
Hmm.
And I think it goes to show that that's why we've seen them commission a lot more series for Disney Plus, a lot more Star Wars content come to Disney Plus than there is Marvel, for example.
Mhm.
I think that's because that's where Star Wars fans are very loyal. They love buying things, whether it's toys, comics, books, posters, T-shirts, whether it's paying for a subscription service where I can watch Star Wars on demand anytime I want. Like we will pay for our things. I think that's probably one of the best things about our fan base. I think Star Wars fans, they'd much rather pay money to get good quality product than, for example, pirate something. If that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Mhm.
Um, so
We
I think
love
I think I
spending our
think
money, Peter.
well, indeed. I mean, just sitting where I am now, just looking at all the stuff in this room I'm sat in is
Same.
it's crazy, but it is. It's one of those things where where I don't mind spending money on it because it's something I love so much,
Yeah.
and it's also sort of supporting it because if I'm supporting the profit margin for the Mandalorian, then it means that we're definitely getting the Mandalorian season 2,
Mhm.
and I'm getting a product that I love, whether it's an action figure or a T-shirt or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And again, speaking of that, I think something that Lucasfilm's always been sort of on the pulse of is merchandising and product
Mhm.
awareness. I think that, George knew that yes, we can make these awesome stories and put them on the big screen, but we can also make these toys. We can also make these books that further the adventures, that bring people closer to the product than ever before.
Mhm.
And he ushered in sort of the merchandising of movies that didn't exist back when he did that. If I remember correctly, I'm sure like Fox gave him the merchandising rights for like next to nothing, because I thought, why is he asking for that for? Like that's something you can't do anything with. And
Yeah.
we look at look at what merchandise is now. Like you think about going to a convention and all the different booths, the Hasbro booth, the Pop Funko booth. You have so many. You have the smaller companies starting up that are dealing in sort of the same frame, like Regal Robot. Like they're
Yeah.
smashing out. Got some good licenses, making some really good stuff. Geeky Tikis, like all these sort of small companies that are doing like huge stuff within our space and making great products, and are now really are doing well for themselves, which is great, and goes to show that if you're putting a good product out, um, people will buy it. And I think George started that with Star Wars and with all the merchandise, and then like as you can see, these theme parks, um, how exclusive the merchandise is to the theme parks. Kathy's of us saw that. You think about Baby Yoda, the whole idea of the decision to keep him secret, and then it
Mhm.
sort of, for me, that made that demand more. Because it was like, oh, we've seen the child now, but we can't get
Mhm.
this product yet, and it's like, yeah, you have to wait because we kept it secret because no company's seen the child yet because we didn't want that getting
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. That was
Um,
painful. Waiting for that stuff to come out.
but it was almost like a delay in sales, but they garnered more sales, I would say, because people were
Oh my
clamoring for it
gosh, yeah.
more.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Um,
I work with a company that has a Star Wars license, and I've seen the numbers of how much Baby Yoda product has sold, and it is unfathomable. Like it's it's insane. So that was a huge success for them, and I think a lot of the merchandise in Galaxy's Edge has been really successful, like the lightsabers. That's not particularly like up my alley. I don't really see myself buying those, but I know a ton of people love them and will drop, their couple $100 every time they go to get a new lightsaber. So, yeah, I mean, merchandising as a whole has always been really important to Star Wars, and it's nice to see that it's been continuing. And like, there's just so much stuff we get now from licensed companies.
yeah, I think those lightsabers, the legacy lightsabers that they sell at Disney parks, obviously if someone lives in the UK and have access to that. But like, I really, really want one, so like, I've sort of held off buying a different type of lightsaber because next
Yeah.
time I go to Florida or California, I really want to go and purchase one and be a part of
Yeah.
that. Obviously Kathleen took this job to sort of be George Lucas's replacement. Um, Sort of handpicked by George, she took the job. But Kathleen didn't really need this job. In 1981, she co-founded the Amblin Entertainment Company with Steven Spielberg and Frank Marshall.
Mhm.
Amblin Entertainment's like a huge sort of production powerhouse in
Mhm.
Hollywood. She also founded the is it the Marshall Kennedy Company?
Yes, the Kennedy Marshall Company.
But she then stepped away from it to take this job.
Mhm.
So it is a case of although she was handpicked by George, and George identified that Kathleen was the person that he wanted to take over, and that's who he
Mhm.
felt trusted most with it. Um, it wasn't a case of Kathleen was desperate for work or needed this. It was a case of George probably had to talk her into it a little bit, had to sell it a bit. Obviously, she's been close with George and Steven Spielberg since she first came into the business. So he decided to take the challenge on. But yeah, I think for me, the fact that you go from sort of being a part of those two companies we mentioned, the Kennedy Marshall Company, Amblin Entertainment, working with Spielberg, you could almost just keep doing that, making a
Mhm.
really, really good salary, and it'd be less stressful than
Mhm.
sort of taking on Lucasfilm and the return of Star Wars. And I think
Mhm.
for me, that just shows how hungry Kathleen is, even now.
Yeah. I think I think she knows that she was the best person for the job, and I feel like that makes her sound like she has an ego, and I don't really think she has an ego, but I read like every interview that's ever come out with her, and she accepted that job immediately as soon as George offered it to her, and I think it was because she knew that like she was capable of it, and I can't think of anybody else that would have been as good of a fit as she was for that job, and I feel like that's probably something she knew as well. So it was probably a situation of, if she doesn't take that job, who will? Because nobody else could fit in those shoes, and I think she knew that she was more than capable of doing it.
Definitely. Speaking of, obviously you mentioned earlier that you first became familiar with Kathleen from watching the behind the scenes features of the Indiana Jones trilogy,
Mhm.
and you mentioned in particular Temple of Doom.
Mhm.
Did you know that Kathleen was appeared in the Temple of Doom in the opening sequence?
I did. That's something I didn't learn until a few years ago. So when I was a kid, I didn't know it. But I discovered that probably 3 years ago, and it blew my mind. Like, I just thought it was so funny. But yeah, that's my favorite Indiana Jones movie. And it's one of her earlier projects that she really had a larger role in. And I think that movie still stands up today. Like, it's such a great film. And I love it when, directors and producers and people like that have little small cameos in their film projects, and I wish she would do one in a Star Wars movie. I would just love to see that. But it's really fun to know that she had like a teeny little part in Temple of Doom as one of the opening scene dancers. I want to know if she had like any dance background, or if she also like rehearsed with the other girls, or if they just kind of like threw her in there at the last minute. Like I need to know more about that story.
Definitely. I think hopefully, with obviously we've got Indiana Jones 5 coming soon. There'll be sort of press for that once it ramps up production and ramps up close to releasing the market and starts. So yeah, I know maybe she might do press for that, and maybe
Yeah.
someone will ask her that. Maybe yourself can ask
Maybe
her
I'll
if you
get to
bump into her
ask her.
again.
Yeah. I'd love that. Yeah.
Do you want to speak about that fateful day in Chicago?
Oh man. Yeah, so I'm going to tell another story first, Peter, cuz I met her first at the solo premiere, and that kind of ties into my meeting her at Celebration. So, um I was invited to the premiere of Solo: A Star Wars Story by Ashley Eckstein. She had some extra tickets to that premiere, and she asked if I wanted to go, and obviously I said yes, because when would I ever get that opportunity again? So I went, and she let me invite a handful of friends. I was there with like some of my favorite people in the world, and it was just us girls, and we got really lucky when we were seated at the red carpet. It was standing area, but I'll just say seated. You didn't get to pick where you wanted to stand. They just kind of like showed you where to go, and it filled up, first come, first serve kind of. And my friends and I were lucky enough to get seated right where the Star Wars show was filming their live stream of the red carpet. And there was a stage where Andy and Anthony were hosting the red carpet. And right off of that stage was a set of stairs. And there was only one set of stairs to get on or off the stage. And I happened to be standing directly in front of those stairs. So every single star and celebrity that was interviewed on the Star Wars show had to go up and down those stairs. They had to look directly at me when they were walking down those stairs. And all day, like the whole night, my friends and I got to meet pretty much all of the actors and actresses in the movie, and we got to meet Ron Howard, and just like everybody was there. And we got to meet and take pictures with everybody, and they all happened to stop exactly where we were standing because they needed to wait their turn to be interviewed on the Star Wars show. So for a few minutes, we'd get to chat with them and take pictures, and then they'd go on their way and finish up the red carpet. But Kathy came out towards the end of the night, and she was with her husband Frank, and she had her daughters and her publicist at Lucasfilm, Lynn Hale. And I always know that Lynn is with Kathy, and Lynn is like a longtime hero of mine, so I was excited just to see her. But then I realized she was standing with Kathy, and I was like, oh my god, this is happening. Like, she's gonna come over here. And I just like freaked out internally. And she went up on the stage, and she didn't stop for photos or anything. She had her family around her, but I did get to talk to Frank while she was on stage. And I was like, "Oh, Frank, it's so nice to meet you." I got a photo with him, and he was wearing a tie that had TIE fighters on it. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I love your TIE fighter tie." And he just thought that was so funny that I like understood the pun. And then Kathy finished her interview on the Star Wars show, and she walked down the steps, and she looked right at me. And I was like, "Please, I'd love to take a picture with you. Can I please take a picture?" And she looked at me, and she kind of hesitated. And I was like, "Man, she's not going to do it." And I asked her one more time. I was like, "Please, I would love to take a picture with you." And she came over, and she very quickly said, "One picture, and then I have to go, or I'm going to get stuck here." And I was like, "Okay." So I literally took one picture with her, one selfie, and then she was gone. It was like she vanished into the air. Like it was crazy. And then I immediately started to cry because I was just like, "Oh my God, like I've always wanted to meet her." And it was just so special. Like, I love that picture that I got with her, and she was smiling, and we didn't get to have a conversation. I didn't get to tell her anything else. It was just, "Please take a picture with me." And then that was it. But it was very special, and that was just like such a high. Like, I had such an exciting high off of that, and I thought, that's it. Like, I'll never ever see her or meet her again. And I was like happy with that because I, at least got to see her. And then uh, a couple years later, I guess it was the next year, I was at Star Wars Celebration Chicago, and I was working at the Regal Robot booth during the convention. So I had an exhibitor badge, and I got to be on the exhibit hall floor before it opened, to set up things at the booth and get ready for the day. And I was at the booth one morning, and somebody came over to me, somebody that I know, and he said, "Hey, I just saw Kathy. She's just like walking around the floor." And I literally dropped what I was doing and sprinted around the hall, like as fast as I possibly could to find her. And I didn't see her. And I was like, "Man, I missed her." Like, I ran around the whole freaking exhibit floor, and I couldn't find her. And I was like, "Oh man, I missed out." And I was really bummed. So I went back to the booth, and then my friend came back over, and he grabbed me and pulled me out of the booth. And he was like, "She's right there." And she's walking through the hall very quickly. Like, she's on a mission. She's got security guards around her. And I just like, I don't even remember this. I think I blacked out. I just like dove between the security guards and came up to her, and she stopped. And I just looked at her, and I was like, "Hi, Kathy." And I was probably talking so fast, but the only thing I said was, "Hi, Kathleen. Kathy, we briefly met at the premiere for Solo. I didn't get a chance to speak with you, but I just wanted to say thank you for everything you've done and, just thank you." And then I started to cry. Like I just uncontrollably, like tears were coming down my face. And she just looked at me and she said, "Thank you so much." And she gave me a hug, like a two-handed good hug, and that was it. And I just said bye, and she left, and I left, and I was so emotional. I was just like so overwhelmed because, like one of the few things in life that I've always wanted to do is tell her thank you. And I would love to tell Harrison Ford thank you because I feel like those two people really impacted my childhood and, therefore like impacted the rest of my life. So I was just like crying and shaking and just I had to excuse myself for a minute. So I went to the women's room, to the restroom, and like locked myself in a stall, and I was just like crying a little bit, and I was just so excited that I got to say hi and that she gave me a hug and said thank you. And while I'm in the bathroom, I get a text message from a number that I do not have saved in my phone. And it was pictures of me hugging Kathy. And I was like, who is sending me these photos? And it turns out it was somebody that I knew, but I didn't have their phone number. And he just happened to be walking by when I was talking to Kathy. He snapped a couple pictures and then he went over to the Her Universe booth because he's very good friends with everybody at Her Universe. And I used to work there. And one of my old coworkers was there. And the guy that took the pictures, his name is Chris. And Chris said to one of my old coworkers, "Oh my gosh, I just saw Savanna and she met Kathy." And my old coworkers obviously knew how big of a deal that was. And so they were like, "Oh my God, text them to her right now. Like, here's her phone number." And that's how he sent me the photos. And so later on, like, I, cleaned myself up, wiped my tears away, came out of the restroom, and I went over and found him. And I was like, "How the heck did you get that? Like, I didn't even see you there." And he's like, I just happened to be there at the right time." So it's really cool that I have like photographic proof of that moment. And thankfully, you can't see the tears in my eyes in the picture, but I have, like, a little video clip of me hugging her, and, I don't know if I'll ever get to meet her again or anything, but that was, like, the best moment for me, and I've had a lot of really cool moments at Celebration, but that one was unforgettable, and I'm just, like, really happy that I got to, um, tell her thank you and just it might not mean anything to her, but it means something to me because I just feel like everybody online hates on Kathy, and I always wonder, like, does she understand how much a lot of us actually appreciate her? So, for me to be able to, like, tell her that, was special for me, and I don't know if she remembers any of that, but I probably scared her with my crying, but it was really, really cool, and that's something I will, like, never forget, ever.
Yeah, I think like two things from me. I think firstly, I think you've hit the nail on the head there when you've said sort of online negativity is very loud, but
Mhm,
and hate is very loud, and it seems like that hate is huge, but I don't think it is.
mhm,
I think it's just it seems big because it's loud. But I think if you talk about what just happened there, you had someone looking out for you when
mhm,
someone let you know that Kathleen was on the floor, and
mhm.
then that same person came back when you couldn't find Kathleen to let you
Yeah,
know where Kathleen was. And then you've had
yeah,
this guy who's took pictures of the meeting. He's went and spoke to someone, and then they've went, "Oh yeah, send her these pictures." So then two other people have been really positive here, where they've managed to put their heads together to send you these pictures in this moment.
yeah.
So without those three, so without the person who told you Kathleen was on the floor and who dragged you out of the
Mhm,
booth to go find her,
mhm,
without the photographer, and then without your colleague, former colleague from Her Universe, all
mhm.
looking out for you and being such nice people, like
Yeah.
the moment wouldn't be the same.
Yeah. Yeah,
And that,
it may not have happened.
and that's what Star Wars is all about. It's about like people loving each other and looking out for each other like that. And that's
Yeah.
that's that's why when people go like the online drama, I'm like, yeah, but that's not to me. That's not real. Like, that's just
That's
people
not
having a complaint.
reality.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
reality is moments like what you've just described is a real moment.
yeah. Yeah, and for me, like, a lot of people ask me why I like Kathy so much, but, there's so many reasons, but, just to share a little story, when I was in college, it was my junior year. No, my sophomore year. The Force Awakens came out, and I had a really hard time in college. Like I had a really hard time making friends. I felt very alone. I didn't really particularly enjoy being there, and generally just every day felt like a battle, like a mental battle to get through the day. And I was very like sad all the time. Um but during that time, The Force Awakens came out, and Kathy was doing a lot of press for that movie. So she was doing a lot of interviews and a lot of magazine articles. And one day, to get away from the college campus, I went to Barnes and Noble and I bought I think it was a Vanity Fair magazine that she had done an interview in. And I took it back to my dorm and I read it. And that interview that she did just like stood out to me so much, because I was like, here is this woman that came from such a normal place in life. She started out as a camera operator for a news station, and then she became Steven Spielberg's assistant by chance, and she impressed him so much with like her organization and her note taking and just her diligence and hard work that he eventually like made her a producer. And it really stood out to me that Kathy was so successful and has continued to be so successful because she works her butt off. Like she just works so hard, and it's so apparent in everything that she does. And in college, that article really stood out to me. So I cut it out of the magazine actually, and I taped it to my refrigerator in my dorm. And every day I looked at it, and it inspired me to get out of bed, go to class, do as much hard work as I possibly could in that day to get to where I wanted to be in life. And honestly, like if I hadn't seen that interview and not really known about her career path, I probably would have felt very like devastated and just felt like I had no purpose, because that's really what I felt like in college. But the day I found that interview and just realized how far she has come in her life because of how hard she's worked, I was like, wow, if she can do that, I can. And I can do all these things I want to do. So her story and her work ethic inspired me like so much when I was in college and graduating and all of that. And I just feel like I owe a lot to her for just like who she is as a person. And obviously like I don't know her personally, so it's weird to say that, but she has shared a lot about her early career days in interviews and articles and things like that. So I feel like I understand who she was at a young age, and she sounded very diligent, and she just sounds like a very hardworking person. So that's why I feel like I have such a strong connection with her, because she really impacted my, early adulthood years, and still to this day inspires me. But it's rare to find women in the film industry that are not actresses, because I have no aspirations to be an actress. And I don't particularly work in the film industry, but Kathy works on more of the production side, organization, managerial stuff. And that was always appealing to me. So it was nice to have someone to look up to who did a lot of the things that I aspire to do. And she got there all on her own, and not because somebody just like gave her a lucky opportunity. She really earned everything that she received. So, yeah, I just think she's so cool.
Yeah, I think definitely from a representative point of view, I think Kathleen is one of the most prolific producers in the history of Hollywood. And I think the fact that she is a woman is fantastic, and it's good for you described there yourself as a young woman, sort of going through sort of a hard time, sort of where do I fit in, what can I do,
Hmm.
sort of where am I going, I don't know. But then obviously you come across this article, and here we see this woman Kathleen Kennedy, you know outworking everybody in sort of the business she's in, and being one of the most prolific producers in Hollywood history. Um, and then it's you've identified straight away, and it's led to you sort of pushing yourself to sort of get to
Mhm.
where you are now, and obviously and to go on further as well. And I think that's the same with a lot of young women, which I think is, absolutely fantastic. Um, I think you are right when you say, actresses. Everyone knows actresses in movies, but like outside of that, like on people who work behind the scenes and in production, there isn't really many household names. It's starting to change
Mhm.
now a little bit. You've got Eva DuVernay. It's becoming a household name.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it took. I think it was. I can't remember who it was the first female to be nominated for a director Oscar. Was it Catherine Bigelow?
I actually don't know.
So I believe it was Catherine Bigelow. It was for The Hurt Locker, I believe.
Mm.
And I'm just going to double check the year because this is like, it's crazy when you think about it, but then it's also not crazy.
I know.
Like, just because of how sort of guarded Hollywood has been in the past. Let's have a look. What's some of your sort of favourite movies that Kathleen's produced while I'm looking up that fact?
Mm. Definitely the Indiana Jones movies. Like I love her stories working on those because Raiders is the one of the first movies she really had a more hefty responsibility, and that's where she also met Frank Marshall and they started dating like secretly. And obviously they're still married today, so it's just really nice to know that they met doing what they love and they're still doing what they love and they're still married and they have a family, and I love all that. But I'm just a huge fan of Indiana Jones in general. Like I love those movies just as much as I love Star Wars, and her work on those movies were just it's just amazing. But I also love E.T. I love Back to the Future. She's worked on so many great movies, but those stand out the most because I probably watched those the most when I was a kid. And as I've gotten older, I've watched other movies like The Sixth Sense and Poltergeist and the other classics that she worked on, like in the 80s. But I watched Who Framed Roger Rabbit a lot when I was a kid. And I didn't know at the time that she had worked on that movie. But as I got older, I started looking into her credits and things like that. And Jurassic Park is another big one. But out of all of them, it would have to be Indiana Jones. And I'm really happy that she's still involved with that franchise and that she's going to get to work on the next one. Because, I mean, I really didn't think there'd be another Indiana Jones movie. I feel like this fifth one has been in talks for a decade, and I don't know if I'll believe it until I see it. But when it eventually comes out, it'll be nice to know that she had a play in it and she's been around all this time and knows that character so well.
No, definitely. I think I'm very excited about Indiana Jones because I think it's probably going to be Harrison Ford's last one. So to have sort of
Mhm.
Kathleen be a major part of,
Mhm.
even if they do more, it will be Harrison's last, I imagine. But it could also be like the end of this character as we know it, and to have someone who's been
Yeah.
involved since the beginning be involved in the end, I think is beautiful.
Yeah.
That Catherine Bigelow fact. So just speaking sort of women in sort of Hollywood in the film industry. So the Hurt Locker, Bigelow became the first, and as of 2021, so even as of now, she's the only woman to win the Academy Award for Best Director.
It's
So it goes to show,
insane.
like, it is, yeah, and but hopefully, like I said, someone like Kathleen Kennedy being in the position she's in, and also, working so hard and having the prolific career she's had,
Mhm.
I like to think that in the next 20 years, 30 years, hopefully we'll have more women sort of a pushing to get that opportunity, but b also being given that opportunity. So
Yeah, I
that's
think so
also
too.
a big point. Yeah. So I think definitely an inspiration to. Like I said, I mean, like I'm a guy, but I'm inspired by Kathleen Kennedy. I just think if you look
Mhm.
at just how prolific she's been, like
Mhm.
over the last 4 decades, really.
Mhm.
and like not tiring out. Being head of a major studio. Lucasfilm's a major studio now. If you think about it, the amount of television and movies that are in sort of pre-production and production, and she's sort of the head of that studio.
Hmm.
She's probably busier now than she ever has been in her career.
Yeah. I like that she's been working more at the forefront rather than in the shadows. I think probably in the 80s and 90s, a lot of people still didn't know who she was. And if they had heard her name, they would have no clue what she worked on. But now that she's like the face of Lucasfilm, I think it gives women the visibility to be like, oh, that's cool. Like, let me learn more about her. And that's kind of what I did. And like I said, I don't really see myself working in the film industry, but for women that are interested in that, it's neat to know kind of where Kathy came from. And I've noticed over the last few years that there's a lot more awareness of other women that work at like ILM and people that work at Lucasfilm, and you see a lot more pictures of women on set, and you're realizing like, oh, it's not just like one lone woman in the group of men. It seems like it's getting to be a little more equal, and I do think she probably plays a really big part in making sure that women are hired and considered for the role. But I also think that it's nice that she is working like so publicly now, and other women can kind of see that and dive more into what goes into the role of a producer. I didn't know what a producer did when I was a kid, and now I understand. And I'm like, oh, that'd be a really cool job. Like, I think I could do that. Um, so I do think that we'll see more women over time working on these movies, and um, yeah, I just think it's great that she's obviously made an impact on the company and is making sure that women are getting credit where credit is due, and doing a lot of different types of jobs as well.
Yeah, I mean, in 1995, Kathleen was awarded the Women in Film Crystal Award, and that's for an outstanding woman who, through their endurance and excellence of their work, have helped expand the role of women within the entertainment industry. So, that was in 1995. She was being recognised for that. Um,
Hmm.
but I think, again, without sort of being the head of Lucasfilm, would we be speaking about it now? Would I have researched and found that fact out? Probably not. Um,
Hmm.
and to me, it's probably something you could almost imagine George sort of known that, like, he has this woman who I know, and who I know is the best person for this job, and is one of the best people in film. But
Hmm.
like, the world probably doesn't know so much. But like, I'm going to put her in charge now, and then everybody's going to find out. I can imagine George having like a little laugh to himself about like just knowing who's putting in charge and sort of the changes that would come because of it. Um,
Yeah.
I always like to think of that. Another thing Kathy did was she served on the advisory board for the National Student Film Institute in the 1980s and 1990s. So I mean, again, like, she like working with students and student film. Like, not only are you producing all these movies, in the 80s and 90s, she's producing Indiana Jones, she's producing Back to the Future, she's producing Jurassic Park, E.T., all these big movies that we all go to see and have on Blu-ray and DVD and watch now. While she's working on all them, she's also taking the time to not rest, but she's working with the National Student Film Institute to help the next generation of filmmakers.
Yeah, and I think that's so important.
I think definitely you have to be looking at the future. And I think we've already hit at it, but it's what embodies Lucasfilm. It's what George always had. George was always looking at the future.
Hmm.
And it looks like that's something that Kathy's been doing as well, like since since the 80s really, and then now as well, obviously with sort of ushering Lucasfilm into the next generation.
Hmm.
Um, would you say one of your most prized possessions your is it a Temple of Doom crew jacket that you have?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, I got that for Christmas last year. And it was a gift from my parents and my brother. They like chipped in together and got me a brand new looking Temple of Doom crew jacket that fits me like a glove. And I feel so cool when I wear it. I've only worn it around the house. Like, I haven't worn it out yet because I haven't really gone anywhere recently. But yeah, it's cool to have that. And I have another jacket that is not related to Star Wars at all, but Star Wars or Indiana Jones. But Kathy always has like the best jackets. She has a really good eye for simple classic clothing. And I noticed that she always has like a really good black leather jacket. So a couple years ago, I made it like a mission to get a really good quality fitted black leather jacket to have as a staple piece in my closet. And I got it. And I got one, I guess it was 2 years ago. And whenever I wear it, I'm like, oh, Kathy would be so proud of this. Like, she would love this jacket. So whenever I wear that, I feel like I'm embodying her spirit. But the Temple of Doom crew jacket is definitely one of my newest prized possessions, and I will definitely have that for a very long time.
No, definitely, that's fantastic. Something that happened here in the UK in 2020 was Kathleen was given the BAFTA Fellowship Award.
Mm-hmm.
So the BAFTA is sort of like the British Oscars, and the Fellowship Award is like the award they give to someone's like outstanding achievement in the industry. So that was quite cool for me to see sort of my fandom come into something mainstream. I remember watching it with like my family, and like people like, oh well, who's this? And I'm like, oh no, like this is the person who's running Star Wars right now, and like,
Yeah.
you know,
What do you mean? Who
all
is
the movies
this?
I watched. Yeah, like, and then like I was like doing a clap in the room and sort of getting watched by my mum and by my fiance at the time, thinking, why is he gone crazy? But I was like, no, like this is like
This is a big
absolutely
deal.
deserved. Yeah, very big deal.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I think, she's been, honoured with that, and even that went under the radar a bit, because I can't remember where I seen it. So I didn't know who was getting it, and then it became apparent before the show. I think maybe someone was tweeting about it, and I was like, oh wow,
Mm-hmm.
I need to watch this now. But like even that wasn't like widely like getting chatted about in my circles anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think you do not win a BAFTA Fellowship Award without putting the work in.
Yeah.
And I think you get it while she's still working. I think it's fantastic, because it goes to show that she probably had about 3 fellowship careers, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
3 Hall of Fame careers, like all tied into one, with sort of the absolute prolific nature of the work that she's put out.
That's the coolest thing about her, is a lot of people think she's kind of a newer rising star, and it's like, no, she's been around for decades. Like, she knows what she's doing.
Definitely. Where do you see sort of the future with Kathy? Obviously, her contract was extended for 3 years, and it now runs till 2021.
Mhm.
Obviously, as we've said, she sort of had 3 careers tied into one, like 3 prolific careers tied into one. We wouldn't begrudge Kathy wanting to retire and rest up and enjoy her money that she's earned.
Mhm.
Do you think it'll be extended, or do you think she maybe goes on to something? You got to remember that, like, she could go back to Amden Entertainment, work there. She could go back and work with her husband, Frank Marshall.
Mhm.
She could start her own production company, really, if she wanted to. If she had that desire to do that, she could absolutely do whatever she wanted to do.
Mhm.
Are you hoping she stays on past 2021 at Lucasfilm?
I think she will stay past 2021. I'm not really in the camp where it's like, oh, I hope she stays, because like, I think whatever she does, it'll be great. And I think if she wants to retire, she absolutely has earned that. And I know that she has 2 daughters, and I'm sure she would love to spend more time with them. They're adults now, but um yeah, it's so weird to think about, because I can't really picture Lucasfilm without her at this point, and I really don't care for a lot of the opinions of who should replace her, because I don't agree with them. But with that said, if she did decide to step away, I think the work she has done to kind of set up this new foundation of the partnership with Lucasfilm and Disney, um, I think she's done a great job. And I think she's set up a good plan for what's to come next and whoever might take over next. I think they've realized that live action shows are working very well for them. I think it's time for them to do some weird stuff with Star Wars. Like, we've finished the Skywalker saga. What's next? And I'm sure she's aware of all the things that are coming next. So if she were to leave, I think it would be left in good hands. I think she wouldn't just leave them kind of high and dry. I think she would make sure that whoever takes over next feels prepared to have that responsibility moving forward. But I mean, I don't want to see her go because I think she does do a great job and I really trust the direction that she has led everybody in. But in the same sense, I'd be interested to see if she did leave, what she would do if she didn't choose retirement. And I would be interested to see, like, maybe if she had ever started, like, I don't know, a foundation or something to mentor young filmmakers or something like that. I could really see her choosing to start something to really encourage the next generation of filmmakers to really do their best. And I think that's something she could do hand in hand with Frank. I think they're both very passionate about that. And obviously they both have their own amazing careers, like separate of each other. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to see her stick around. I don't think there's any reason for Disney to not extend her contract again. I think she's done a phenomenal job, but I also wouldn't blame her if she decided, her work here is done and she's ready to either stop working and retire or do something different. But generally, like, I'm just really happy with everything she's done, and yeah, I'm interested. I'm interested to see what will happen next.
Yeah, and you've got to think as well. Obviously, George Lucas is currently in the midst of setting up his Lucas Museum of Narrative Art, which is not just going to be
Yeah.
a museum of storytelling, but I imagine it is a foundation, and it's going to have a lot about getting young people into filmmaking and telling stories.
Mhm.
And it's a huge deal when that place opens. And does he perhaps come headhunting again? Does he go, you know what, Kathy, I hired you to do that. Now I need you to come here and help me with this.
Mhm.
I think that whatever Kathy wants to do, she can do.
Mhm.
So for me, I think I would love for her to stay on because I fully trust in her leadership of Lucasfilm and in what's going on there. But for me, it's like, if a different project comes along that she wants to do, then 100% got my blessing to go and like I wouldn't begrudge her doing that. I think
Yeah.
time can be so short sometimes, and time doesn't wait for anybody. And I also wouldn't begrudge Kathy if she said, you know what, I'm going to go and have a holiday now because I've earned it. Because you know what,
Yeah.
you've had, as we've said, she's had 3 Hall of Fame careers in the space of one. Um,
Yeah.
when a lot of producers don't have one Hall of Fame career.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy to think that she's been with Disney now for almost a decade. It I didn't realize it had been that long, but when I was just thinking about it, I was like, yeah, it's been a while. And I do think if she did decide to retire, I mean, she would probably chill out for a little bit, but I do really think that it would be in her heart to like give back and find a way to work with students or, young people or maybe underprivileged kids that want to work in the film industry. I think she would definitely find a way to help those people and kind of give back to the next generation. Um, but yeah, man, if she wanted to go retire and live her life and enjoy her family, I would not blame her at all. And I think she's definitely deserved that.
What would you say are the sort of the 3 biggest things you've sort of admire about Kathleen?
I think the biggest one is her ability to really stand out in an industry that's so heavily dominated by men. Because I've worked before in jobs where the rest of my team was all men, and it's really intimidating to be in that position, and it's really hard to make your work stand out and feel valuable. So I think the fact that she was able to do that from a very young age is incredible and just shows how much of a team player she is. I think she works well with men without trying to overshine them or, take credit for their work. I think she very much stands on her own 2 feet, but she works hard enough to be on the same level as them, if that makes sense. So I love that. I love her work ethic in general. I think, like I said, hearing about her younger days when she was an assistant to Steven Spielberg, she spent a lot of extra time outside of work to make sure that his notes were well taken and organized and ready for him, the next day. And I think that just shows that she really cared about her job and she cared about helping him as much as she could. So I love that. And the third one would probably be the fact that she seems to ignore all of the online drama. Like I like the fact that she's not on social media. I like the fact that she seems very confident in what she's doing, and she just, whenever she does interviews or public appearances, she just has a presence that like demands respect. And I really admire that. And I think it's easy as a woman to be shy or intimidated or take things personally. And as we talked about earlier, a lot of people online like to say really negative things about her or pick her apart. But I think when you look at her, you realize that she knows who she is and she knows how cool she is. And she doesn't let any of that, negativity get to her. So I like that a lot. And I mean, everything about her is great, but those three would be probably my top ones.
Yeah, I think you have hit the nail on the head with sort of those key things. I think the pure grit and determination that she showed in her early career to sort of prove herself worthy of the position she then got into, and
Hmm.
is in now, and then now sort of performing in that task as sort of the president of Lucasfilm with the she's not on social media. You won't find her doing things that bring the company into disrepute. Um,
Hmm.
she very much leads from the front. You know, she's a nice person, hardworking. She's a very positive personality. Um,
Hmm.
I think these are all things that like we perhaps forget about, especially in like this decade we live in now, where we've just had a Trump presidency in the UK. We've got a Tory government that's a little bit pointing towards sort of promoting their hatred in people
Hmm.
sometimes.
Hmm.
And I think and then you've got you know probably one of the biggest media companies in the world, like Disney. Well, is the biggest media company in the world, but then have Lucasfilm, which is a big part of that, and then you've got this person in charge of that who's very much on the right side of history and is trying
Yeah.
to push future generations in the right way to sort of to be better, to make the better choice, to be kinder.
Hmm.
And I think that's really, really important. And I think it goes back to George's message to where be kind to people. You've got the choice to be better.
Hmm.
Take it if you can. Um, so I think definitely. I don't know. It's one of those things where when we look back like over the last like 50 years, and you look at the amount of movies that she's worked on, like no one really has a career similar. You could say Kevin Feige, for example, but if you take Kevin Feige out of Marvel,
Hmm.
it's all the big hits on Marvel movies, and he works hard at that. He works really, really hard at that. So I'm not taking away from Kevin Feige, but where Kathy's had them worked on franchise after franchise after franchise. She's
Yeah.
worked
And
on
even her
horror movies from
standalone
Poltergeist.
movies are so good. She's worked on such a wide range of films that it's like, is there anything she can't do? you know?
Definitely, and I don't think there is anything she can't do. I think like the sky is the limit. So I think whatever she decides to do next, I think will be whatever it is she wants to do next. I think,
Hmm.
and I'm looking forward to seeing what that is. Um, Obviously, she's brought in. Obviously we have the Lucasfilm story group who work at Lucasfilm working on the stories and stuff, making sure things sort of try and stay in, not just in what would the word be, make sure things stay like things don't get convoluted. If that makes sense, like
Hmm.
storylines and timelines. Um,
Hmm.
and obviously she is a big part of working with those guys and nominating people to those roles. Someone like Dave Filoni, who is a great storyteller and has really developed as a storyteller in the last decade. You
Mhm.
have someone like Kathleen identify that and go, you know what, yes, we're gonna move you into live action with the Mandalorian, and then he's been brilliant at that, and then now it's like, you know what, now we're gonna give you a show to run. We're gonna give you the
Mhm.
Ahsoka series to run. Again, just sort of promoting greatness around her, not just in herself. If that makes sense.
Mhm.
And I think like developing those people who've been in the company a while. Obviously, like George himself hired Dave Filoni, um,
Mhm.
and then to see how Kathy's identified that, give him some more things to chomp on, and he's chewing them really, really well. And then now giving him more things and developing him and building the people around you essentially, and
Yeah.
promoting that sort of promotion within the company. I think is fantastic. I think I can't remember who it is now. Is it Kiri Hart? She just left the company? Is that right?
Yeah, she left. I think she left a couple years ago. But Kathy's main group of people that she works with are still mostly women. And there's a lot of women producing, everything from the animated stuff to the films and Mandalorian. So, yeah, Carrie Hart was with her team for a while. And then I think she ended up leaving. And I believe she works with Ryan Johnson now, but I could be wrong.
But I think like building that relationship and sort of, you know, seeing someone like Kiri Hart and building them up, and then obviously opportunities have come on that she wants to pursue, and she's moved on now, which you don't really
Yeah.
want to lose people, probably not, but you've built these people to a situation where they can now move on to other things that they want to do,
Yeah.
which I think is like again fantastic, sort of and really is sort of spreading that um, self belief, hard work ethic, and also like passing on the knowledge to these people who then they gain the knowledge and then they can pass it on to
Yeah.
generations as well. I think it's huge. Um, when it's all said and done, let's fast forward, say 50 years from now. Obviously, Star Wars will still be going. We'll probably have episode number 100 coming out or something like that. Not 100, but episode 20 maybe. Star Wars episode 20 coming out in cinemas. Um, Obviously, we'll have like the founder years. We'll have like George Lucas, and then we'll have Kathleen Kennedy. And I think for me, I think it'll be obviously you're never going to be able to do what the founders done because the founders created everything. If that makes sense. But I
Mhm.
think ushering it into this generation of streaming and of like the types of content that we have now, I think like you aren't going to be able to argue with just how integral Kathleen Kennedy's leadership's been to Lucasfilm
Yeah.
at this period of time.
Yeah, her work will definitely be a legacy in the Lucasfilm business.
It's almost like I don't know if you watched the to be fair, you probably did. So I don't know why I'm saying I don't know if you didn't watch it, but the Imagineering series on Disney Plus.
Yes, that show.
Um,
I've watched
and
that
I've,
show probably 10 times. Maybe more.
and I've, well, it's absolutely fantastic documentary series. So anyone who hasn't seen it, go watch it. Obviously, it takes you through sort of the history of Disney parks, but by doing that, it also takes you through the different leadership of Disney throughout the decades. And obviously, you have the Walt era, which is where Walt has all the ideas and spend all the money, and people don't necessarily think it's Walt can do what he wants because he's Walt, if that makes sense. Um, and then you have sort of the power grabs before and like afterwards, after Walt's passing and things like that. And then I know it didn't particularly end the best, but like it was the Michael Eisner era where sort of the Disney parks really got back on track
Hmm.
at the beginning of his sort of leadership. And I think like not that it was not on track, but I think sort of Kathy's done a similar thing where like what was the future of Star Wars? Like we really didn't know, but it's actually turned out to be probably the most productive era in Star Wars history.
Yeah, I think it's because she isn't afraid of taking a risk. I think Rogue One was a big risk because that was the first standalone movie, and didn't really, other than the cameo at the end of Vader, like it didn't really contain any big name characters that we were already familiar with. And I think it says a lot about her that she was willing to do that right out the gate. Like that was the second movie they came out with under her leadership. And that was a big risk and could have been a complete failure, you know? And it wasn't. Like that movie made a ton of money. People still talk about it all the time to this day. And I think that is like one of the most important parts of her leadership is that she's willing to try new things and listen to other people's input as well. Because John Knoll pitched that idea to her, and for her to sit there and go, "Huh, that sounds great. Let's talk about this more." I think that says a lot about her, rather than like, you know, maybe in 5 years after the business is kind of set up more, maybe we can come back to that. Like she was ready right then to recognize that he had a really good story in mind and that they should do something with it.
Yeah, definitely. I think like John Knoll, who's been at ILM for like a very long time. He comes with this idea, and it's a case of the ideas are really good. So you listen to it more, you flush it out more, and then you realize this can be a project. This can be our next movie. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
And having faith in those around you, who sort of know what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, I think if you look at Solo, that was like Lawrence Kasdan and his son John Kasdan's like big idea. We do a Solo movie, and trusting in sort of Lawrence to be, he's wrote Star Wars for a long time. He's been a screenwriter for a long time. We'll trust him with this.
Mm-hmm.
He's got this story idea. It's going to be good. And then obviously you have the problems on set of Solo where sort of, to me, when things are going well, that's when everyone sort of pats the leader on the back, pats Kathleen Kennedy on the back.
Mm-hmm.
But when things aren't going well, is when people tend to get on the back of the leader. But really, it's the time when you should really clap the leader the most, because you've got two Academy Award-winning film directors in Phil Lord and Chris Miller directing Solo, because I'm sure Lego Movie won one. So and I like their movies; they're good. They're directing this Solo movie from the Lawrence Kasdan script. Things don't seem right. So she flies Lawrence Kasdan to set in London to see what's going on. Comes back that like we've give these guys direction, told them that this is what we want. They're still doing it. It's at that point where you've got to make a decision, and if you don't make one, you probably lose the project. But it's a case of what it is, right? We're going to part ways, and that's like the absolute bravery to make that decision. I think
I think so too.
That's what I love about Kathleen the most, is in the tough times that she's made the hard decisions. She's decided to shut production down on Solo towards the end of its principal photography. We've then had to find a new director, so they've gone for Ron Howard. They then had to restart a production with more time added, which again is more cost. But decide that we have to do this, and we have to strike now if we're going to save the project. Things like, I don't know exactly what went on with episode 9 and the Jude of the Fate script by Colin Trevorrow, but obviously whatever it was, whether it was the death of Carrie and the way Leia played a part in that story, but for whatever reason, Colin Trevorrow's now got issues with making this movie, and it's a case of we're gonna part ways then, and we'll make a different episode 9, and it's easy to sort of judge those decisions and sort of being an armchair quarterback, and this is what I would have done. But at the end of the day, like we don't have the ounce of experience that she has, and we don't have any of the pressure that she has, and to be able to make that decision, and then to go and get JJ, and regardless what you think in these movies, but to go to JJ and go, right, do you want to come back? What's your idea for this? Right, okay, we'll move and go that way now. I think that takes a lot of courage, and I think that's to me that's where I mean, don't get us wrong, I do applaud the good times, like what I mean, but I think the trouble sometimes and how she dealt with them, I think says a lot about her as a person, and it shows her as a strong person, a reliable person, someone who cares so much about the product, and someone who's not scared to make the tough decisions.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's also important to remember that we only know a fraction of the real story. Like, a lot of people like to make clickbaity articles about what's going wrong on the set and, oh, they're doing reshoots and all of that. But number one, reshoots are completely normal. And number two, we don't know what's going on set, and with the executive team. There's been a lot of things that have happened in Star Wars that, like, the fans might think they have it all figured out, but in reality, the behind the scenes story is completely different and the fans have really misconstrued it. So, we might never know what the issue was with Lord and Miller and Chris Trevorrow, but we do know that those projects are done now. And I will say there are some things in Star Wars that, like, I'm not a fan of. Like, I didn't enjoy The Rise of Skywalker, but I did very much enjoy Solo. And I think, you might have some failures in your career and in your lifetime, but when you look at everything that Kathy's done, her successes far outweigh her failures. And in her time with Lucasfilm, in my perspective, which is obviously not the same for everybody, I really think the only dud that has come out is The Rise of Skywalker. And I'm like, all right, if that's the only dud out of all the things that she has overseen, we're looking at really good percentages here, like, things are going well. And like you were talking about with Solo, they definitely had some issues on the production there, but I think she problem solved. I think Ron Howard was a perfect um, director to take over that project. I think he did a phenomenal job. I think the cast for that movie was perfect, and that was a huge undertaking. I mean, like, how do you replace Harrison Ford? They did it, and they did it wonderfully. So I think those should all count as big wins for her. And the small failures and small downfalls just are so small in comparison to the successes that she's had.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like it's one of those things where like so Rise of Skywalker wasn't one of my favorites either, but I think the movie still performed pretty well at the box office.
Mm-hmm.
Merchandise sales were still pretty good for it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like really, I think as a company, they're probably in the Walt Disney Company as being the grand owners, probably aren't too worried about that.
Yeah.
So again, even though it's sort of some fans don't like it, it's still performed really well. I still saw it 4 times in the cinema. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I do, even though it's not my favorite. So I think definitely what you said there about taking time to look back and look at the percentage game, like how many of these projects have hit it for you. And when you think that all of them have, apart from one, really, um, that's pretty good going. Really good going if you think
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I say, like, like with The Rise of Skywalker, I didn't particularly love it. I reviewed it on an episode of this podcast. If you want to hear what I think about the movie, you can go listen to it there. It's not something I really talk about much because it moved on, but it's a case of like, because of the way Kathy set the company up now and the projects that are coming, it's a case of if there is a project that's not for you, it's absolutely fine because guess what? Something else is around the corner, like you probably will like.
Mm-hmm.
There's like Star Wars, everybody now, we've got Bad Batch coming May the 4th.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Andor coming, we've got Book of Boba Fett coming, we've got Mandalorian coming. Like, not all those projects will be for everybody, but I guarantee that there's something there for you. Like, you're going to love one of them, if not more. And like that's really wonderful. And like that shows you just how sort of wide thinking Kathleen is. I think of saying like, this project's awesome. I love this project. Let's put it out. Like, yes, it might. Some people might be turned off by it, but we're really going to capture a new generation here. And then I'll be like, oh well, this project here, this is really going to capture the old feeling of Star Wars. So it's something for our older fans, and catering for all. And I think that's what's happening now with all these different projects coming.
Mm-hmm.
I think it makes sense rather than make one project for everybody. Let's make let's make different projects for different people, and let's really sort of expand our not just customer base and like clientele, if you know what I mean, but also like we can tell a lot wider variety of stories as well, and
Hmm.
we can spread the story even further throughout the world.
Well, and that's how they're going to make the most money because everybody thinks that Lucasfilm has to make one Star Wars project that appeals to everybody, but that's just never going to happen. So the fact that they are doing a lot of different things for, every little section of fandom, like that's how they're going to be the most successful as a business. So it's genius. Like they're doing it the right way. Even if I don't like some of those projects and I might not watch some of them, I'll watch the others, and consume content for the others and buy merchandise. So they're really reaching everybody that they can. And that's what you want in somebody that is leading a company. It's a business. They want to be making money, and she's definitely doing that.
100%. So I think, have you got any closing thoughts? Anything that we haven't covered about Kathleen that you love? Things that really do make Kathleen Purely BELTA for you?
Hmm. I think she's just really fun. I think I really enjoy reading and listening to her interviews because sometimes she mentions things that surprise me, and she does really give credit where it's deserved. And I think she's really good at recognizing talented people. And with the two very short interactions I've had with her, I feel like she's a good person and appreciates the people that, support this company and watch the movies and all of that. So I think she's great. And I'm excited to see kind of where she goes later on in her career and just life in general because I know she's not anywhere close to being done. I think she'll be 68 this year, I believe. So she's definitely getting older, but she's still working, which makes me really happy. And yeah, I'm just so happy that she's like around. I just love the fact that she works on all the things that she does and that she has made it, a little more public about her upbringing and her early years in the film industry because like I said, it's just impacted me so much. And I hope that she realizes how many people enjoy her work. And, you know, I hope one day maybe the YouTube algorithm will like change and not promote all of the hating Kathleen Kennedy videos because every time I go on there to watch an interview with her, I have to scroll through like 50 videos of angry fanboys like ranting about how much they hate her. And that, that gets frustrating. So that'll be my closing thought. Dear YouTube, please put all of your good Kathleen Kennedy videos at the top of your search results. Thank you.
I mean, for me, YouTube, how about let's just deplatform hatred?
Hmm.
Let's just take the channels away. Do you know what I mean? But no, I think like I wonder how Kathleen like. Obviously, there is a lot of people out there who are like, I hate women and I don't want a woman in charge of Star Wars. So that's I
Hmm.
didn't like this project, and it's because a woman was in charge. And it's like, but it's not though. You didn't like the project because maybe you didn't like the writer, you didn't like the way it was executed. Many different reasons why. Not because there's
Hmm.
a woman in charge. You're just picking that as a reason to say.
Yeah.
But I wonder how I wonder if she laughs because she must be a little bit aware of it. I'm guessing. Like I wonder if it's
Oh,
like
yeah. I'm sure she laughs at it. I'm sure she's like, wow, you guys are pathetic.
yeah, and the fact like for me, I think she's doing something right when you have these sort of right wing Nazi boys upset with her because it's like, yeah, you're damn right, you should be upset because guess what, this woman's doing it. She's bossing it.
Yeah.
She's putting out a brilliant product. She's driving this company forward in the next generation. And yeah, you should be scared because guess what, your bigoted views aren't going to be tolerated.
Yeah. Well, and she's always going to be more successful than they ever will be. That's the best part is like she's just winning at life.
It is one of those things. It's like where you know we just say no. I didn't particularly like the Rise of Skywalker, but like I am nowhere near the level of filmmaker that J.J. Abrams is. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
can't
I
really.
couldn't have done
I
that.
can see why I didn't. I can see why I didn't like the movie, but also like I've never busted me balls hard to get myself in a position where I can even pitch a movie to Lucasfilm. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he's put the work in.
So
He's done more than we could ever do.
100%, yeah. Like he's had those projects where he's been, you know, doing things for no money, making student films, small movies, independent movies before getting sort of the opportunity to make bigger stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like I've never
Mhm.
done that, so it's like I'm never gonna call him like personally attack him because it's like, you know, he didn't on purposely make a movie I didn't like. Do you know what I mean? He's worked hard to make a movie that he thinks is the right movie. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think like, you know, those people who are like, oh, Kathy's bad, blah blah blah. It's like, well, she's not. Like she's working her ass off in this role to produce Star Wars for all of us. Like, yeah, you're not gonna like all of it, but you cannot say that she's not doing that. She's working so hard to produce all of these awesome Star Wars content so that there is something there that you can enjoy. Some
Mhm.
more than others,
Yeah.
but you're going to enjoy at least something that's come out. And it's like those people who are like, I love The Mandalorian, and it's like, well, she's a huge part that The Mandalorian wouldn't be being made if it wasn't for Kathleen Kennedy.
Yeah. Yeah, my response to the people that like to tear her apart, I'm always like, "Cool, well show us your movie. I'm excited to see your movie." You know, like if you want to talk this big of a game, then get to work and show us how talented you are and how much better of a job you could do, you know, sitting behind your computer and complaining all day.
No, definitely. Um, what is here's I want to for you a curveball. What's your favorite outfit you've seen Kathleen Kennedy in?
Oh man. Ugh, I love this. Um okay, I'm going to go way back to the Force Awakens panel at San Diego Comic-Con in 2015. She wore a blouse, a top that was designed by someone named Preen. I think it's like Thorn Benghazi Preen. And it's a green geometric shirt that has Darth Vader's helmet on the front. And it was such a cool piece. And she wore it with just like black pants and black shoes. But I love that shirt so much that I had to have it. And it was like a $400 shirt. But I tracked it down because Disney Parks ended up selling it. And because the shirts were so expensive, clearly nobody bought them at the parks, and they went to the outlet stores, the Disney outlet stores, and I got one for $25. And it's the exact shirt that she wore. And I have two of them. There's a red one and a green one. And I only wear them for like very special occasions. I wore the red one to go see Rogue One, and I've worn the green one at a couple special occasions. But that was definitely one of my favorite outfits. And she always wears really cool sneakers. Like she's as tall as I am. I'm like 5'2", 5'3" on a good day, and she's 5'3". And she always wears sneakers that have like a platform on them to make her taller. And I've never done that before, but I'm like, that's very cool and very smart. If you don't want to wear high heels all day, but you want to be taller, to wear like platform sneakers. And they're very trendy right now. So I love that she always wears like really cool shoes with her, you know, very like business professional suits. She wears a cool pair of sneakers all the time. So yeah, I love her sense of style. She's very like classic and modern, but still very fun. And that green Darth Vader top is definitely my favorite thing that she's ever worn.
I can't believe you got it for $25. That's a huge bit of bargain work on your part.
Oh my gosh, I was so excited. Like I will never get rid of that shirt. It's just it's the best. And I can't believe I got it for that cheap. And my mom got me the orange reddish one for Christmas one year, and she got the same deal. She paid, I think she may have paid like $40 for it, which is insane. But I'm glad that I have both of them, and they're extremely hard to find now because I've looked online to find other pieces from that collection. There's like a white version as well, and I've tried to find it, but it's like impossible to find them online now.
I think my favorite outfit was I think it was Celebration Orlando when she had the Star Wars logo with the lightsaber. I think it was a her universe T-shirt paired with
Yeah,
the
that was
white
in
blazer on her
Anaheim. Yeah. Yeah,
Anaheim.
she went and bought it at the booth, which is cool. And the funny thing is, so she bought stuff at her universe booth in Anaheim in 2015, but then in 2019, The year that I met her at Celebration Chicago, like I said, I'm still good friends with a lot of my old coworkers at the company, and she went and shopped again at her universe at that convention. And I don't know what she bought, but there's pictures of her at the Her Universe booth again buying more clothes. So I think that's really cool that she like supports these, licensees and really wants to wear the things that they're making. I think that's awesome.
It definitely is, because if that was me, I'm not gonna lie, I'd be like trying to get as much free stuff as possible. But
Right.
the fact that Kathleen goes and actually puts money back into these businesses, um,
Yeah, that's
again, it shows the
crazy.
type of person she is. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think that's pretty much bringing us to the end of our conversation about why Kathleen Kennedy is Purely BELTA, Savannah. Have you got anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. I think I've blabbed enough about how much I love her, but I mean, yeah, Kathy, if you ever hear this, I love you. Maybe she'll hear this, Peter.
Maybe we should get t-shirts made saying Kathleen Kennedy is Purely BELTA.
Oh my goodness, yes. I can make that happen.
I wonder if she would think Purely BELTA means like something bad, or like doesn't know what it means.
We'll just put hearts around it so she knows that it's a good thing.
Yeah. But no, I'm really glad we did this, because obviously, episode 1 we had Brian come on talk about Qui-Gon Jinn. That's a character within Star Wars who he really loves. Episode 2, we had Brandon come on from Talk Me 94 talking about, he loves the behind the scenes documentaries, books, interviews we get about the making of Star Wars, which has been around, really since the 90s, and is a huge part of Star Wars. And I'd say, with Brian, it was a character he chose, and the characters really sort of make us identify with the story that's happening within
Mm-hmm.
with what we're watching. Great characters is one of the huge things about Star Wars. Then you have Brandon, who picked behind the scenes documentaries, and I think because of the behind the scenes content we have access to as Star Wars fans, it
Yeah.
makes us more of a fan, if that makes sense, because we don't just know the story off by heart. We also know how a lot of these things were made and the problems on set and how things were done and how, how they created new effects to do things like, and that's very open for us as fans. So again, it allows us to become more of a fan because it's easy to access this information,
Mm-hmm.
and it's always good quality information. So again, like another aspect of why Star Wars is pretty about that is that sort of access behind the scenes nature. And then obviously yourself, Savannah, you've chosen Kathleen Kennedy, the current president of Lucasfilm, as being a part of Star Wars. That's purely BELTA. And if you think about the generation that, this generation that we're in now, and where the company is under Kathleen Kennedy's leadership, I think it's 100% integral to why Star Wars remains purely BELTA, to why it stands the test of
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
We've come into a new era without George Lucas. The world's changed a bit, but here we go. We've had I think five new movies. We've had shows come to the Disney Plus streaming service, which wasn't a thing before. We've got 2 theme parks. We've got a whole new series of books coming out. This High Republic era book stuff that's coming out. And I think all of that's integral to why Star Wars is going to remain the biggest thing in the world. And I think
Mm-hmm.
without Kathleen Kennedy being there and being purely BELTA, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in.
Yeah, I think so too. I think she's done a great job.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Savannah. It's been great to hear about why Kathleen Kennedy is purely BELTA.
Thank you for
I just
having
want
me,
to hear this.
Peter.
Well, before you go, I want to hear you say the words purely BELTA one more time.
Purely Bella.
That was the best one
I'm
yet.
so sorry. It's so bad. I'll work on it. I'll work on it. And when I come back for the next time, I'll have it like perfected. Purely Bella.
I'll,
Kathleen Kennedy
I'll
is
hold you to
purely
that.
Bella.
Where can the people find you on social media, Savannah?
You can find me everywhere at the Dorky Diva. My blog is thedorkydiva.com, and I host a podcast with our friend Brian Balance called The Dorky Diva Show, which you can find anywhere where you get your podcasts, and the episodes are also on the dorkydiva.com as well. But yeah, thank you, Peter, so much for having me. I am always so happy to have a chance to talk about Kathy, and it's always great to catch up with you. So yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
And obviously, you have another podcast, which, we've been talking about Kathleen Kennedy and why she's Purely BELTA. Obviously, she's a woman working so hard in Hollywood and had such a prolific career. Obviously, you have a podcast called The Working Diva, which sort of helps promote similar things for women in the workplace. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so The Working Diva is a newer podcast that I started a year ago, and I alternate episodes between interviews with working women and sharing their career stories and their career path and all that stuff. And then the other episodes that I do are just with myself, and I usually cover a specific topic, such as like how to stay productive when you're working at home, or just kind of like sharing my story. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I would love to have Kathy on the Working Diva. That's like a major dream. I don't think that'll ever happen because she doesn't really do podcasts, but it's been really fun to have the Working Diva and share stories of women like Kathy who work just as hard and might not have, a public facing job where people get to know them and get to know all the cool things that they work on. And one of the most recent episodes I released was an interview with Caroline Kermel. And Caroline was a producer on Star Wars Rebels and Star Wars The Clone Wars season 7. And Caroline's story reminds me a lot of Kathy. She started out as an executive assistant at DreamWorks, and now she works at Warner Brothers Animation now. But she eventually made her way to Lucasfilm in the middle, and she's just incredible. And she works extremely hard. And if you enjoy Kathy, I would highly recommend listening to that episode with Caroline because she has a lot of very similar qualities, and it was a total joy getting to talk with her. So, yeah, The Working Diva has been really fun to do. And you can find that podcast by searching The Working Diva on all of your podcasting apps. But I also add those episodes to the dorkydiva.com too. So that's kind of the hub for everything that I do.
Fantastic. Well, Savanna, thank you very much for joining me and spending some time telling me about why Star Wars and Kathleen Kennedy is Purely BELTA for yourself.
Thank you, Peter.
I hope that you're staying safe during the pandemic. Obviously, the vaccinations are rolling out across the world, which is fantastic news, and I really can't wait for celebration coming up next year to really sort of meet yourself again. Obviously, and obviously meet all the cool Star Wars fans again for those positive, awesome times.
Me too.
But yeah, thank you very much, Savanna. May the force be with you, and remember, listeners, always tell that to Kanja Club. Please follow us on Twitter at BoresStar. That's at BORESSTAR. And on Instagram and Facebook at Star Wars Podcast. You can also reach us on email at starwarspodcast@gmail.com. The Star Wars Show can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, and wherever podcasts can be found. Please give us a like, subscribe, and don't forget to leave a 5-star review. May the force be with you.